goes live in 2 minutes. Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello, is that me? For some reason, it all caught me unawares today. Excuse me. How are you? It's, thank God, a Friday. And, the end of a really awful week. I'm sorry, but this is rough stuff. You know, I was thinking the other day, there are so many people who, and every once in a while I encounter them, who literally do not access news. They don't watch television news. They don't read a newspaper. They don't listen to a news station on the radio. They literally don't have a clue what's going on. And I suspect the only way they do ever know what's going on is when they encounter someone in their lives who says, "Oh, what do you think of blah, blah, blah?" And they say, "Huh?" And that's how they find out. I could no more live that way. In ignorance of what was happening. But I think it's a huge percentage of people who do. And I suspect they're, happier? They're symbolic of ignorance being bliss? Because if you don't access what's happening beyond your own teeny little realm, then you don't, what's the context of your life? I literally can't comprehend it. What a small little life that would be. But I think for some people that's more than enough, I guess. So I don't want to be judgmental because it just might be that that's all they can handle. And they might figure that they have no capacity to alter events beyond their immediate environment. And in fact, they know from life that they have enough difficulty having any impact on things in their own little teeny-weeny environment. So why branch out into total powerlessness? But I my makeup is clearly totally in another direction. But I was thinking, if I were one of those people, I would have had a better week, I think. You know what I hate about this, the aftermath of these mass shootings, is right about now. After the shock, we start talking about, what it's about and who did it, and then everybody just gets sort of stuck, and there's this depressing realization that we're not going to change a thing. We're not going to change a thing. I heard a woman whose father was blown away in the San Bernardino attack. I heard her give a speech yesterday, begging lawmakers to do something about the ready availability of these weapons of mass destruction. She was so eloquent. And I'm just listening to this, I'm thinking, again, I have no ability to comprehend how anyone could listen to what she was saying and not want to act. And yet, they don't. They listen to a woman like that. Or maybe they don't. Maybe they protect themselves. They don't listen to it. Do these people who love their Second Amendment so much, do they ever challenge themselves to go and do what President Obama and Vice President Biden did yesterday? Do they ever go and attempt to comfort families who have been ripped apart? Do they ever do that? And if they did, could they not? How would you look into the eyes of these mothers and fathers and husbands and wives and children and then still maintain that, well, I'm sorry, we have to ensure that people can have access to guns. It's one of our prime values. How do they do that? And I guess when you realize that you have no ability to comprehend huge swaths of your fellow citizens and where their heads are, that you just get kind of like I am today. And it ain't a good place. It's not. I hate feeling so incapable of comprehension. I value my brain. I value its ability to try to parse and make sense of things. And this makes me feel like a total idiot. Caller, hello. Caller, hello.
Hello, Lynn.
Yes.
Hey, what gets me about that whole Second Amendment thing is it only says in there to protect your home, not outside of your home. It doesn't allow for weapons, and actually it's a musket is what it started out with. But it's amazing how they blew it up into you could have bazooka or something. I just don't understand.
I know. It's a very the founding fathers messed up on this one because it's not well written.
No.
A lot of them are. So here it is. It doesn't say anything about your home. Here's what it said. No, here's what it says. It's absolutely one of the shortest. It is the shortest one, I think. Here it is. I have it right here. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And you can see how that can lead to the interpretation of an absolutist. Shall not be infringed. That's what it says.
Because I read something with Huffington Post or one of them, and they were saying about it was just to protect your home. I don't know where.
No. This is. I mean, I am.
That's their interpretation of it too. You know.
I mean, this is courtesy of the ACLU. The certain amendments. I've got them right here. And number 2, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, all those little clauses have been, parsed because they're talking about a well-regulated militia. What they were talking about is life in their day and time, and that every little town, every little state, every little community had to muster its own security, the people in it. So the people in their homes had to have some firearms, and when there was a threat, they had to be able to come to the town square and be ready to defend themselves. Because it just says a well-regulated militia. Now, that's an inroad for people like us. It says regulated. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Founding Fathers effed up big time on this. But again, as you said, muskets. I mean, that's what they thought arms were, muskets.
It makes me mad as hell that my neighbor can have a assault weapon like that. And when I heard that you could have those, I was like, when I first heard it, this has been a while back, I said, you got to be kidding.
I know.
I was shocked because I thought our government's not going to let that go on. Oh, yeah. They don't care.
No.
It's amazing. I mean, what would you need with that? And if you did want to shoot it, why couldn't it have shooting ranges so you just use it there?
Exactly.
And have it locked up there.
That's right.
I don't know. There's other ways about it.
That's right. If you want the thrill of spraying bullets at an astonishing rate, you can go to a range and we'll give you the weapon and then you give it back to us. I mean, common sense stuff like that has no place in the conversation we seem to be having. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Most people have them. They're not real gun owners. Because most people that shot shotguns and pistols, they have a kick to them, and there's like a baby's weapon. You just go in there, boom, 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 boom. I mean, who can't do that? I mean, you don't even have to be accurate. You could just shire it with a. It's just
that's
amazing.
Right. It's just a spray. Yeah, it's like,
and they're all big and tough because they got an assault weapon. Well, how are you tough with an assault weapon? Anybody, you could give a kid an assault weapon and kill a bunch of. I mean, it's just. I don't understand it.
No.
I don't get it one bit at all, and it just pisses me off. I'm sorry.
No,
it makes me mad as hell when
I know.
think of it.
We're in the same boat.
And I'm not against guns. I used to hunt, which I don't like that. I don't really I don't get that unless you eat it. It don't even make sense to me, but I'm not against hunters and any of that. None of that stuff. You want to go shoot, you want to shoot a pistol, go ahead. But when it comes to some assault weapon, military style or whatever it is, it's just unreal.
Unreal.
Yeah, it's just...
I hear you.
And for Donald Trump to sit and act like it's Muslims and when it's just a gun that shoots more bullets that kills a bunch of people.
Yeah.
What part don't they understand? It's so simple. Control the gun and you'll control the massive killings. They don't care.
Apparently they don't.
They worry about the gun sales is all it is, and the business that sell them. That's what it's all about. Money.
Money. Not life.
No, they don't care about people's lives. Oh, well. Well, thanks for listening to me.
And thanks for listening to me too. We're in the same, we're the same boat.
Thanks
Okay.
a lot. We'll see
Bye.
you.
Bye. You know, I read an interview with the son of the man who invented this particular weapon of mass destruction. And he invented it for the military. And the son said he's dead, he would be appalled that this invention of his, which he thought was to be given to soldiers in the defense of our country, was being given to anybody and anybody so that they could kill innocent people. Hello, caller.
Yes, good morning, Lynn.
Hi.
Hey, Lynn, let me spread what I've read on the room, read about when I read about the internet about the militia in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The United States does not have a standing army.
Right. Exactly.
Therefore, they said citizens it was required to have a gun in your house, that you were well trained yourself, because you were the army.
It's sort of like, I think Switzerland has the same thing. Every Swiss resident has to have a gun because they don't have an army.
It's sort of like the American Indians. Everybody, all the males were trained in warfare. But they did not have a standing army.
Yeah.
The American Indians, did not have any type of standing army, and they couldn't even fathom that. So when the United States come over with people with uniforms and, wiped out the tribes out west, it's just terrible. But that's...
Yeah. Well, that is it. I mean, and that's where, the fact that the Second Amendment starts with the idea of a militia needed for the defense of a state. That's because there was no standing army. And somehow that's all gotten lost. And that last little phrase, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, has somehow risen out of that as if that first part didn't exist.
And the problem I think we have with everybody, including myself, we don't know our history.
Huh.
So you have to go back and understand at the context of the times, what were they actually talking about? And we're trying to interpret it. Like you say, we take the last sentence, truncate the end of it, and say everybody should have a gun.
Yeah.
Now, what the hell? That's not what it says. And again, people want to be, we're too simple and intellectually lazy to figure out what the truth is. So it's easy to throw sound bites out and say, oh, I know the thing, and they pull their Constitution out and they read it to you like you're a dumbass. But they're not reading it in relationship to history, how it was.
Right.
And that's like I said, that's we do constantly. And the people who aren't very bright, they'll tell you on TV, especially we know the stations that will report these things, it's intellectually lazy, and then people soup it up. I'll leave it with one thing. There's a song by Michael Franti called "TV, the Drug of the Nation."
Mm-hmm.
It's a very powerful lyrics, and it encapsulates how TV controls it's the drug of the. I can't go into all the lyrics of it, but it smashes it right on. If you want to put a bullet through the mind of television, like I said, listen to the song called Michael Franti, TV. Death of a Drug through a TV Nation, and it'll blow you away, Lynn.
Okay.
Hey, thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, so when they wrote this thing, it was a different world, totally. They were reacting to a different set of circumstances. And now we have this huge military, and we have police forces. And we don't have any militias anymore. We don't need them. So listen to one of our generals, one of our supposedly greatest generals, I guess, of the moment, former commander of our troops and international forces in Afghanistan, General Stanley McChrystal. He wrote an op-ed today. General McChrystal, an American citizen, a human being, watching, as we all did, the horror, felt compelled to speak. And the first words out of his mouth were these: a battlefield on our soil. That's how he viewed that nightclub. It was a battlefield. He says that was my reaction as I began to learn about the horror. And he goes on to say this: do you know that that was only part of the bloodshed in our communities last weekend? He said at least 121 Americans across our country were mowed down by gunfire last weekend. The tragedy in Orlando, he said, wasn't even the only mass shooting. Did you know that? A mass shooting is what we define as 4 or more, I think, victims. And believe it or not, it wasn't the only mass shooting. You didn't know that. I didn't know that. As I was saying the other day, we don't even hear about these things. They're just little local stories now because news is defined as something that is not the usual. You don't see stories saying millions of people walked their dogs today. Millions of students went to school. People went to work, ate lunch. No. News is something different, something not the norm. And so we don't even know. That wasn't the only mass shooting. There was a mass shooting in Roswell, New Mexico. Some son of a bitch with his gun, because that's his right, killed his wife and then shot 4 children to death. The oldest was 14, the youngest was 3. I didn't know that. I learned that from General McChrystal, who I guess did a little homework before he wrote this little piece. And then General McChrystal, who knows about war and knows about weaponry, gives us one more, again, statistic. From the time that we went into Afghanistan, the war that he oversaw, from 2001 to 2010, 18 times. Oh, God, no, wait, let me get this right. This is beyond belief. From 2001 to 2010, almost 120,000 Americans were murdered here in our country with guns. 120,000, okay? And he says that, my fellow citizens, is 18 times the number of Americans killed in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan, which is the war zone. If we're tallying up dead, the war zone is right here. It's in the war zone is Orlando, and the war zone is Pittsburgh, and the war zone is the United States of America, and the dead are not soldiers. "18 times more than the soldiers killed in war. What the holy hell is wrong with us? And General McChrystal, who knows from AR-47s or AK God knows what's or all these goddamn things, he says this is a national crisis. And McChrystal is asking soldiers, he is asking American veterans to stand up and to add their voice to the growing calls for sanity in this country. He says this, in my life as a soldier and a citizen, I have seen time and time again that inaction has dire consequences. In this case, one consequence of our leaders' inaction is that felons, domestic abusers, suspected terrorists, deranged people have easy access to these weapons of mass destruction. And as to the people who say, oh, but if we already have millions of them out there, and if we put up more regulations, these bad guys will still be able to obtain guns. He says that is both poor logic and poor leadership. Just as something as complex as a combat operation in a war zone meant that we could not eliminate every enemy combatant or prevent every American casualty, of course we can't prevent every dangerous person from getting a gun. And we cannot prevent every gun tragedy. But wouldn't preventing many of them be worth it? So the general says, as a general, I go in to get something done. I know it's not going to be a perfect thing. I know I'm not going to kill all the enemy. I know some of my people are going to die in the effort. But to do nothing? To throw up your hands and say, oh, well, there's too many of them and this and that, and, it's fruitless. Forget it. He says, we Americans are not a uniquely bloodthirsty people. So what's the difference between us and the fact that we, unlike any other nation, kill each other like this? It's because the guns are there. That's the only thing that's different. The only thing that's different. It's the guns. General McChrystal writes, our communities should not feel like war zones. And our so-called leaders have to do more to keep guns out of the hands of those who cannot be trusted. And this must be our mission. That's what the general says, General McChrystal, okay? Will these Republican gun shills who always say, oh, listen to the generals, will they listen to this? So General McChrystal is asking American veterans. He's calling them. He's sounding the bugle. And he's saying, come on, we got to muster one more time because we are needed. He is asking veterans to stand up. And there are similar calls for gay people in this country who have proven they are tough as can be, and they are great organizers and great at political change. There are calls for the gay America to take this gun battle now on as its own. Get a coalition of the veterans and the gays and the mothers and the people who have not been brainwashed by Sean Hannity and the NRA or whatever. Get that coalition together. But here's the truth. The filibuster in the Senate, these bills that are being proffered that are going to be voted on, apparently on Monday, it's just an exercise because everybody knows they will not pass. If we couldn't pass any reasonable gun legislation after those babies were mowed down in Newtown, we ain't going to do it now. Okay. Let me get some of your emails in. William writes, in addition to the Second Amendment, I'm also ticked off by the Third. Well, the Third is of its time. It's a, as you say, he says it's a quaint one. Rarely used in any court decisions. I'll read it. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner prescribed by law. And that was because, I mean, think about it, it was 70, there was the British had moved their troops right into people's houses without the consent of the owners. And they're saying a person's house shall not be used to quarter soldiers. Yeah, that one doesn't come up a lot. William writes, I'm guessing that people did not want that sort of intrusion, and now we resent it in a different way. I wish the spirit of that could be expanded to deal with civilians with military-style weapons roaming our neighborhoods. Yeah, well, dream on. Our country's total dysfunction is so on display right now. And for those of us who do pay attention, it's really, it just sort of takes the wind out of you, doesn't it? Chuck writes, regarding people who don't listen to news and don't have a clue, they call those people Trump supporters. Also, Senator Murphy's inspiring 14-hour filibuster apparently did not inspire the Republicans. Of course not. The gun control measures that will come for a vote on Monday will fail, as both parties retreat to their respective corners on gun control. Toomey, oh God, what a pathetic little creep he is. Toomey is portraying himself as a gun control advocate in all of this. No one should be fooled by that. Yeah, his idea of gun control is so minuscule, is so absurd, and it's all about saving his own behind. Chuck also writes, did you see Marco Rubio? Yes. Has possibly changed his mind and may now run for re-election to the Senate. I'm pretty sure he said at one point in his campaign that he hated the Senate because nothing ever gets done there. As we'll see on Monday, Rubio is correct. Nothing gets done there. Seb writes, I was wondering if you'd be interested in online... Oh, God, this is... That's a sales pitch. Sorry, Seb. Okay. It's been pointed out that the Republicans find themselves in a very sort of uncomfortable intersection of issues with this latest horror. And that is their wanting to demonize Muslims. And yet, in this case, the Muslim in question has mowed down another group they like to demonize too. Gays. And so they find themselves in a case where they have to be, and as I think I mentioned earlier in the week, a lot of Republicans dealing with this thing have never mentioned that those murdered were gay. They call them young people. They call them Latinos. They call them all kinds of things, but they don't say what brought them all together to that place. And it was that they were gay. And so Republicans still continue to work to proscribe gay people's freedoms in this country. And yet they talk about praying for these dead souls and try to distract the attention back onto ISIS. This guy had absolutely no connection to ISIS. And we talked about this before, he was a guy who was going to explode at some point in his life. He'd exploded all through his life. A number of pieces being written about him now. Today's Wall Street Journal has a very long article about his history. And that a guy with this history could buy a gun is unbelievable. That a guy with his history could get work at a security firm that is one of, I guess, the largest security firms in the country is unbelievable. From the time he was in elementary school, he was in trouble. He caused trouble in school. He called people names. He was a bully. He was mean. The Wall Street Journal even found a 4th grade yearbook from his elementary school in Florida. And the woman whose yearbook it was shows what she had done to his picture. This is him in 4th grade, and she had drawn in green around his face. So much did she fear him. In 4th grade, she'd highlighted his picture and then written troublemaker with an arrow pointed at him. That was a girl in 4th grade. A girl in 4th grade had his number. Okay? He was suspended for a total of 48 days in a 2-year period while he was in high school. This guy had trouble written all over him. How the hell does he get that kind of weaponry? He was known as a hothead. Listen to this. In 2007, he enrolled in an academy for people who wanted to be law enforcement officers. His anger flared repeatedly during his time there, recalled people who witnessed it. At a barbecue in the spring of 2007, he erupted when his hamburger touched a piece of pork, something he considered a religious affront. He told all his classmates that he ought to kill them. A woman, Susan LaForest, who was there, was also a trainee, said he told us not to laugh at him because this was serious and he was going to come back and shoot us. Not long after, he was sitting in his car in the parking lot outside the school as classes were leaving or were about to be dismissed, and the authorities in the school who had seen him there, they swarmed his vehicle because they feared he was going to do a massacre right there and then, and he was escorted off the property. An official said that he had threatened to bring a gun on campus. This is 2007. And then there was a piece today that I saw about one of the surgeons who tended to the wounded and the dying, who was covered in their blood. He's a Muslim. He is the son of a Muslim immigrant, Dr. Ibrahim. See, there's the complexity of reality right there. It's a complexity that remains, I guess, just impossible for people like Donald Trump and all those who love him to comprehend. The son of a Muslim immigrant created the horror, and another son of a Muslim immigrant tried to repair it. Lori writes, I think all of us listeners agree with the premise that the Constitution is a living document, as several Supreme Court justices, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, believe. This point of view allows justices to take into consideration that we are not using muskets anymore and that we do not have well-trained militias anymore. We've got a well-trained army, is what we got. Unfortunately, others are originalists, which is the stupidest thing I can imagine, who have had too much influence and are part of the problem. For instance, here's a quote from the late departed Antonin Scalia. He defined originalism, and that's what he was all about, this way. The Constitution that I interpret and apply is not living, but dead. Or as I prefer to call it, enduring. It means today not what current society, much less this court, thinks it ought to mean, but what it meant when it was adopted. Isn't that something? That a supposedly brilliant mind could think that the way that we should interpret our current law based on a law based on these precepts that came from a totally different age and reality. Do you think when the founding fathers were thinking about search and seizure that they could imagine computers? Or could they imagine, drones and the potential intrusions on people's liberty, or come on. Could they imagine weaponry like this? Would they have thought it was a good idea, even though we had a huge standing army, to let American citizens have military-style weaponry that could kill literally hundreds of people in mere seconds? Do you think they would? Because I look back at that bunch and I think they were a pretty amazing group. They were smart. But they weren't capable of looking 250 years into the future and creating a document that made sense in 2016 in every respect. Much of what they put down still does hold true. That's how smart they were. But they weren't clairvoyants. Okay. This is so funny, Tony, that you brought this up. My son said to me this morning, "What are you going to talk about today, Mom?" And I said, "I don't know. I can't find it." He said, "Well, talk about the fact that there's a new season of Curb Your Enthusiasm." And I said, "No, come on." As a matter of fact, what I said is, "Get out of here. I've got to read the paper." So, here's Tony, and he writes this. Some good news. Lynn, with all the bad news and sadness lately, HBO has announced a 9th season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I, for one, am very happy to hear it. So am I. That is Sam's and my favorite show. We just love it. And we were so happy to see Larry David's going to do another. But that is too funny that you sent that today. Too funny. You're going to be my son's favorite person. Oh, God. So, other news today. The assassination of that young member of parliament yesterday is so stunning because that just doesn't happen in Great Britain like it does here. And now we find out that, guess what? The guy who did it was a follower of white supremacists in this country. Well known to the Southern Poverty Law Center. As soon as they saw the name, they said, "We know him." So our particular brand of ugliness and hate, because of the internet, travels across oceans and leads to the slaughter of a wonderful young mother and wife. She was very outspoken about letting Syrian refugees into Great Britain and welcoming immigrants. And see, if you're a white nationalist, which this guy was, that's just intolerable. So apparently he killed her. Infected by the ugliness here and the ugliness that is all over the place right now. It's everywhere. It's global. And something that I noted, believe it or not, the United Nations Security Council actually released a statement in the aftermath of this latest shooting here, condemning the attack for, quote, targeting persons as a result of their sexual orientation. And what's amazing is that guess who signed on to that? Egypt did. Russia did. You want hypocrisy? It's like Republicans saying our prayers are with them as they then go into a meeting to try to figure out how to make sure that gay people will not be able to get a job in their state if the employer doesn't want gay people. The United States ambassador delivered a pointed rebuke to countries that block gay rights at the United Nations, urging them, quote, to contribute more than condolences. Well, see, we can say the same thing to the Republicans. We don't want your prayers. We don't want your condolences. We want some action and some acknowledgement that gay people have all the same rights as anybody else in this country. American embassies in several countries, including India, which has an anti-sodomy law in the book, drape themselves in rainbow flags. Believe me, if a Republican were president, I would not be doing any of that. This Security Council statement, which has no, it's just a statement, is the first time that it has ever weighed in on something having to do with homosexuality, because it has so many countries in it that torture gays, that kill gays. Homosexuality is a crime still in 73 of the world's 193 nations. In 13 of those nations, it is a death penalty. And in that regard, those nations are with ISIS, right? ISIS, who throws gay people off roofs of buildings. ISIS and homophobes, they got a lot of common ground. So the capacity for hypocrisy in the wake of these things is often stunning. Stunning. Linda writes, as my 20-something daughter so eloquently stated, it's hilarious that these old white men who are strict constitutionalists think we should interpret this document today exactly the same way it was created by the same guys, certainly no women, certainly no blacks, certainly no Muslims, no Jews, no whatever. It was created by these same guys a couple of hundred of years ago who wore leggings and powdered wigs. Yeah. Isn't it something? All right. I was astonished at John McCain yesterday. I always like to think that he's a little less nuts. And did you see? And then he sort of walked it back. He flat out said, it came out of his mouth. I heard it, that the president himself was responsible for the deaths of those people in Orlando. Good God. Good God. Okay, so somewhere I saw the latest polls in terms of the negatives, how many people had unfavorable views of Donald Trump in terms of demographics. It's just stunning. I wonder if I can, here, see if I can get it up. It was so unbelievable. There's no way, I don't think, that a guy like this could win. Oh, now I can't find my phone. My phone! If I can't find my phone, I can't live. Where did I put it? Here it is. Okay. So, it turns out that, I'll get it here, I think. Oh, this is great. This is great radio or TV or whatever the hell this is, right? Okay, here. And did you also see, by the way, that Colin Powell's right-hand man, has become the highest-ranking Republican to say he's voting for Hillary? Richard Armitage, retired Navy officer, Assistant Secretary of Defense under Ronald Reagan. Okay, here it is. Here are Trump's unfavorables in the latest ABC Washington Post poll. His unfavorables among African Americans, 94%. Unfavorables among Hispanics, 89%. Unfavorables with women, 77%. Unfavorables with Americans under 50, 76%. With college graduates, 74%. With independents, 68%. You can't win a national election with that. You cannot. So, what remains to be seen is whether or not the Republicans will actually let him out of that convention as their nominee, or whether he will allow himself. This is going to be something. I am just like watching the clock. I want it to play out because I want him. I want him to be the head of the GOP because they deserve him. They made him. They created him. They nurtured the base that elevated him. And it, if anything, would ever be fitting and proper, it would be that the Republican Party would be the party headed by Donald Trump. Meanwhile, just a few minutes left. People are puzzled a little bit by what Bernie Sanders is up to, by the way, because Bernie went on, spoke to his supporters yesterday in a speech that was streamed. Apparently, 200,000 people, acolytes, did listen to his speech, and it was very weird because he still refuses to acknowledge that Hillary Clinton has won the nomination. And what's weird about it is he had wanted to go into the convention looking like he had power and leverage, and he could have. But he's blowing it because he lost California a lot more than by a lot bigger margin than was expected. He lost D.C. His biggest supporters in terms of elected people have abandoned him and have moved on. That's the Senator Jeff Merkley. Also, the unions, the communication workers have abandoned him now. Also, MoveOn.org has moved on. And people who remain neutral have endorsed Hillary, the president, Elizabeth Warren, everybody else. AFL-CIO yesterday endorsed Hillary. So what is he... I mean, people are really confused now about what it is he's thinking he can do. And here's what somebody writing on Politico says. Leverage. It's the one thing Bernie Sanders' advisors and aides consistently point to when asked why he's he's still staying in. He wants leverage at the convention for the platform. But it's the one thing he's been bleeding every day ever since he dropped California's primary by a much wider than expected margin. He's not building leverage anymore. He's losing leverage. And as I said, people who had been on his bandwagon but who see the bigger picture and know the bigger picture is ensuring that Donald Trump goes down to ignominious defeat, as do as many Republican office holders as possible, don't get it. It's very odd. And I'm wondering what it is he's thinking. I really don't get it. Very odd to me. But, I mean, he's entitled, but he's becoming more and more of a non-entity as everybody else moves on. Because that's the reality of the situation. Okie doke, guys. I guess that's it. Let's hope for a relatively placid weekend. I hope you enjoy yours. I'm going to try to enjoy mine. And I wish you a good day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.